country.
There are growing concerns, sir, in countries like India that technologies like artificial intelligence and automation could make large parts of our population unemployable. There are a lot of the jobs that exist at this moment will no longer exist in months and years to come, and therefore we could have the prospect of our demographic dividend turning into a demographic disaster.
Yes, but what will be eliminated are, let's say, repetitive jobs. So I have certain doubts to what extent India can become the factory of the world. But India can become maybe one of the brain trusts of the world. So soft skills are key, and what is particularly important is reskilling and upskilling. And the World Economic Forum is now involved in quite a number of initiatives around the world to prepare the people for the skills we need tomorrow.
You're saying you have doubts whether India can become the new factory of the world. The Prime Minister has rolled out a major Make in India initiative, Stand Up, Start Up India. Why is it that you believe that they haven't kicked off in the way that the Indian government would like? A lot of the companies that are looking to leave countries like China, preferring to go to countries like Vietnam and Bangladesh instead of come to India.
I didn't mean if I say will not become the manufacturing, let's say, mechanism for the future. But we have to recognize that manufacturing tomorrow will be different from manufacturing today. So I do not see anymore so much the blue-collar clerk who for 8 or 10 hours a day does the same movement with his hands. There will be much more even in a factory, there will be much more the person who uses permanently his head and his brains to see how what he is doing can be improved. And so the job description of tomorrow will be different from the job description of today.
And are you concerned there that the lack of quality education, we've barely been able to give basic primary and secondary education to our population, and the kind of high-end education that's required to get a whole young population up to date with the requirements of the era of automation and artificial intelligence is way too big a curve for India to be able to traverse very quickly? What do you think needs to be done to make that happen?
No, I would say India has a special advantage. India has so many people in the digital sector, and if we can even amplify those skills, we have to create the teachers for tomorrow. That's where we are lagging behind. I come back to my point. I think everywhere educational systems are outdated. We have to use much more lifelong education, because we have to upskill people permanently, and we have to use much more digital education. And here we can do it. It just needs the necessary policies.
Let's talk for a moment, Professor Schwab, about the growing global slowdown. There have been concerns amongst economists worldwide that if these trade wars continue to flare up, we could soon be heading towards a vicious cycle of economic recession.
Yes, if we look at the forecasts now, the slowdown is a reality. If we look at the analysis of IMF, OECD, and so on, we should not, let's say, artificially prevent, in my opinion, the slowdown by creating even higher debt loads. And here, India, I have to praise India for a very responsible fiscal policy. And if you look at the debt load of India compared to other countries, it's very reasonable. So the way out of the situation which could occur, which means a substantial slowing down, I think, in my opinion, are investments into the future. Again, education, but we need also to invest into a green economy. We need into invest very substantially into our infrastructure. So to invest much more, even if it increases for a certain moment the debt load, but to invest in the future, I think is a good investment. And it creates the necessary demand to accelerate the economy again.
The Indian government has very recently cut corporate taxes. Do you believe this could potentially stimulate the foreign direct investment coming into India?
Yes, but of course, the move first to increase taxes for certain foreign operations was a hit for the confidence of the stability of the legislative framework of India. But now India, in terms of corporate taxes, is comparative with most countries in the world. So this should not be anymore an impediment.
What more would world investors like to see for companies that are looking to get out of China to start putting their dollars in the India story?
I think they would like to see a infrastructure which is similar to the Chinese infrastructure, which has been substantially built up over many years now, also as a stimulus for the economy. I think they would like to see trade agreements, to have a certain stability for the future. I think those are the key, and they would like to see a reasonably flexible or labor legislation which provides a relatively high flexibility.
The World Economic Forum is marking 50 years of its existence. When you set up the World Economic Forum not in its current avatar, but in a very small basic avatar 50 years ago, did you ever imagine that this is the way it would shape up to become a major global movement, Professor Schwab?
No. To go back into the history, I had written a book where for the first time I conceptualized what is called the stakeholder concept, which means that business should not only serve shareholders, but should serve all those who have an interest in the company. And then I felt I should create a platform in a small village where people really interact, like Davos. And that was the birth of Davos. It became so successful. At that time I had already the prospects of a good career in business or in academia. So at the end I devoted my whole life to the issue of, or to promote this notion of stakeholder capitalism, which means I believe in entrepreneurship, but it always has to be combined with a social responsibility. And I have to say this notion, when I came first time to India 35 years ago, this notion reflected very much the concept of many Indian enterprises.
So WEF has been at the forefront of predicting and forecasting economic trends. What are the mega trends that you think would shape the world economic order in the months and years to come?
I think if I look at fundamental concepts, we have been behind a number of those, and they are still valid. I would say the concept of stakeholdership, but in a new form, which means that business, in order to operate on a global level, has to work together with governments and civil society to address the great social issues we have, like poverty, like pollution and so on. The second area which should much more penetrate our society is the notion of social entrepreneurship, which means that you serve society not necessarily to become a billionaire or to become a unicorn, but to have the satisfaction that you really did something of an innovative nature for society. also public-private cooperation, what the forum stands for. We are now the International Organization for Public-Private Cooperation. I think will become much more significant as a base for the future. And finally, I would say the fourth industrial revolution. It will dominate so much our mind. And what we are lacking at the moment, what is one of the key, let's say, missing elements in our global structure, is that we do not work together globally to create the necessary rules around the technologies like artificial intelligence and so on. And here I'm very proud that we have created the network of centers for the fourth industrial revolution, with a very prominent presence in Mumbai and in India.
Professor Schwab, it's been an honor and a delight to speak to you. We wish you all the best. Thank you so much for taking out time. Thank you.
Thank you.